time for Bringing the Heat with Trey Lyle.
Welcome on into another edition of Bringing the Heat, day number 9 of the NASCAR versus 2311 lawsuit. My name is Trey Lyle, the aforementioned host of this shindig. Joining me is Michael Massey at Tim_Massey22, and the man who is in the courtroom today at Pit Lane CPT, Dalton Hopkins. And you wonder, why are we going up at 2:30? It's a little early. We've been going at 7. How is Dalton already out of the courtroom? Well, Dalton, today was a monumentous day in the courtroom and in all of NASCAR. These two sides settle their lawsuits. And so we have to start off with from the jump. You were there. Can you walk us through kind of the timeline of what led to the settlement this morning in the courtroom?
Yeah, it started with everyone walking in like a normal. I mean, really didn't seem anything different. Of course, it started a little bit earlier. Started at around 8:30 or so, and then Judge Bell comes in and says that they're going to start with an hour-long recess, a few delays here and there, and it really it kind of culminated to saying, look, we're going to take about an hour-long recess. Both sides are having a discussion at that time. So pretty much right from the get-go, there was already rumors, questions, whispers about potentially a settlement coming. And of course, but when I went down to the lobby and saw some of the other reporters there, we were all kind of discussing like, yeah, this could be it. Like, this could be the end of it here. So went back up to the courthouse about 30 minutes later, and everyone was just kind of talking amongst themselves. And then some lawyers started walking around and everything, and it didn't really seem like, it looked like something was happening. We're not really sure. So, I got the pen and notepad like ready to go. And at that time, Jeffrey Kessler walked in. Before that, Judge Bell asked some of the counselors, like, are you ready to continue where you left off? And meaning, like, are you ready to continue your testimony? You ready to continue your examination?
It seemed to me it was a trick in terms of trying to, like, this was at the 99 or like at the 1 yard line, and he wanted to get it over the goal line. This was like an easy trick for him to kind of be like, I will keep doing this unless you get your you know what together.
Yeah, I think it seemed like it was I don't know if there was any kind of push toward the settlement, but he was telling the counselors like, hey, you ready to continue? And to which everyone was like, oh man, like, are we not settling? Are we gonna continue? So, and people were like, oh man, I was kind of hoping that I didn't really want this to go past Friday because I got plans and blah 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 blah. And at that point, Jeffrey Kessler walks in and says, and we all just, like, if you saw everyone lean in like in anticipation, and Jeffrey Kessler said that both sides had reached an agreement. So they had to finalize the paperwork. That took about another 30 minutes to finalize the paperwork, but they finally came back in, presented it to Judge Bell, and he agreed on the settlement.
When he said what was you wrote down his exact statement when it was announced. What was that statement? And then, like, what was it like to finally hear this is over?
I believe that when he said, it was a number of things, but overall it seemed positive. He said that he commented that the agreement is great for NASCAR, great for the teams and drivers, and it's great for the fans as well. So both sides seem to believe that it's a pretty positive settlement. So that's the end of that, I guess. That's the end of that for today.
What did you feel like when the settlement was announced personally?
On a personal note, selfishly, I was like, of course it happens, like, literally in the first hour, flying back up here to Charlotte, North Carolina. Of course it happens within the first hour of me going to court. Like, of course it does. But I mean, I guess it could have happened like last night, like as I was on a plane up here. So But regardless, I think overall, I'm kind of mirroring what everyone else is feeling right now. But I think the overall feeling is relief, that it was a settlement and it wasn't an actual jury's decision, that a verdict that decides what was going to happen, because I think a lot of people would agree with me in saying that there wasn't really going to be a positive outcome if it did come to that. I feel like, for regardless of who won, it wasn't going to be very good for either side. So I'm glad that there was a settlement reached on a personal note, on a selfish note. And of course, I'm glad that now it looks like I'll probably be able to go home a little bit earlier.
Do you wish you'd slept in 30 more minutes this morning?
No, because I wouldn't feel the anticipation that I felt sitting in that courtroom for 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah,
What
you
about
bring
the
that up.
jury? I was just gonna ask about the jury. What was their reaction? Were they excited that it was over, or were they like, "Hey, now you promised me $50 tomorrow. I want my $50."
It is really funny that you bring that up. I don't. Did you read the recap? Because that's like the only place where I wrote this. So I wrote in the notes here that one of the jurors, when they were like, everyone was all smiles that it was over. Everyone was all smiles when the settlement was reached. But one of the jurors, Judge Bell, comes in, tells the jury, "Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time. But the trial's over. You're free to leave now. You're free to talk about it wherever." And one of the jurors jokingly asked, "Do I still get paid for tomorrow?" Which the whole court laughed at that. And then when they all stood up, one of the jurors did like the Breakfast Club fist bump in the air and walked out. So there was a lot of laughter at that.
We're gonna get into the terms of things, and we got some comments in here. We're gonna talk about the future of the sport. Jeff here says it still doesn't fix the situation. I do want to bring up a part of that. But Massey, you and I were taking this in live via text message and via Twitter. What was it like for you taking this in? Because it seemed, when Dalton tweeted out, like the judge telling the jury, wait an hour for, you're gonna have this little bit of pain of wasting an hour for hopefully way less pain in the future. It felt like the settlement was coming. What was your kind of reaction in real time as it was happening?
Well, so a little insider note: in about an hour, I was going to be leaving to
go to Charlotte,
head down to Charlotte, and go cover the trial with Dalton tomorrow. So I'm not gonna lie, I had a little bit of FOMO not being there for that final decision, but I'm also relieved that now the trip to Charlotte is canceled and I can just stay home. And actually, our off season hasn't started yet. Trey, I don't know if you're aware of that. Our off season hasn't started yet.
I still have to put together Front Stretch Jeopardy. Like, that was supposed to be what I did this week for frontstretch.com podcasting wise, was prep for our Christmas episode. And I haven't been able to do it because this has been my focus.
Yeah. But, when it was like talking, the more I thought about them settling, the more like I was on board with the idea. I'm disappointed that we never got the Curtis Polk testimony, because I feel like him versus Buterman would have been an epic battle. Just like Denny versus Buterman, or Kessler versus Jim France. And it's just, we'll never know how that would have gone. But I think it's the right move. I mean, that you're wasting all this money on these court dates. Save a little money by cutting
billable hours.
Yeah, billable hours.
If I've learned anything, whether it was in college football or in NASCAR, the most undefeated thing in life is billable hours, and that continued in this case.
Yeah, I just think, like Dalton said, though, like either way, something was going to get torn apart. Whether it was the race teams, the two teams would have gone out of business. If it went one way, the other way, NASCAR would have been ripped apart. Maybe they would have had to sell the tracks. The structure would have changed, which I still think there's going to be some internal
We'll
changes.
talk about that. We'll talk about that. So,
But yeah, so I am glad that I think this is the best way where both sides kind of get to keep doing what they're doing for the time being.
we appreciate everyone in the comments. We're going to talk about the terms in a second, so we'll get to your question, Alex. Obviously, the Johnny Morris thing came out, and we touched on it. I think we touched on it last night about could this have swayed some things. I think it might have. I do want to. There are kind of two avenues to take about it. It's the terms of the settlement and what does it mean for the teams, and then part of everything they said. Jim France said it. Michael Jordan said it. They just want to go racing now. They love racing. They want to go racing, and that's going to be a big part of the latter half of our discussion. But let's get to these settlement points. Dalton, the 4 pillars were a big part of this case, like the 4 pillars that were asked to. Now, what it appears to be, one of the first things that we found out was 2 things. The teams are getting their charters back, and they characterize them as evergreen. They can be aka permanent. I think the new term they're going to use, Jordan Bianchi was just reporting this as premier charters. Is that something like that seemed to me like the only thing that has been clear so far in terms of the settlement agreements. We're going to get to the other things that were reported, but right away they went to 2311 gets their charters back, or 2311 FRM gets their charter back, and these are permanent.
Yeah, I think we're not hearing. That's really the only thing that we're hearing right now. I mean, it's the only thing that I've heard, especially outside the courthouse and with what I know. But really, the only thing I think the only reason why we're hearing that and not too specific on anything else is because I don't think it's been quite finished yet. From what I understand, they're still going to be discussing the actual finalization of whatever terms they have agreed to, as to how that looks, as to personnel changes, or however the revenue is split up, or not really revenue, but the governance itself, which was one of the pillars. The revenue that's going into the actual disbursement when it comes to the actual media shares. But overall, one of the biggest things that they were fighting for was the permanent charters. Now, I think there's people out there that I've seen. I mean, we just saw a comment a few minutes ago that said, it doesn't change anything. Nothing's going to change. Well, it does in a lot of ways, because for one, I can guarantee you these charters, or honestly, evergreen charters, franchises, whatever you want to call them now, they're about to increase in cost or in worth by a lot. In value, thank you, in value by quite a bit. And that's going to be, I think that's the biggest thing, is that now that it feels like the teams are probably going to get a little bit more revenue out of this, which is what they wanted. And I do feel like that there could be an improvement on their overall racing product as a result. I think people were kind of expecting to see one of those drastic changes that Massey was listing off, NASCAR being torn apart, or on that side, or 2311 and FRM not having charters and not being able to race anymore. Look, you don't want that. You don't want to see that. You don't want to see NASCAR get torn apart. You don't want to see basically what would be the result, what could be the IndyCar split that we saw that happened in the 90s. Like, you don't want that to happen. I don't want that to happen. So I think it's small things that are being announced right now. I know there's some other folks that have got some sources that are telling them specifics on it, but yes,
Bobby with a really good point here. Permanent charters incentivize a bigger investment by sponsors. And like, the value of the charter could double essentially right now because they're permanent. Because it's a lot easier to invest cash into something that will be around.
And the result is that we might see those big name sponsors start making a comeback. We've seen a lot of the loyal sponsors. FedEx, first one that comes to mind, the loyal sponsors start to break away from the sport. M&M's, Lowe's, Home Depot, like a lot of these big brands that were once adorned on these cars of the biggest drivers in the sport, now they're gone. But maybe the charters will incentivize a little bit of that to come back.
The other ones that are reported, let's go to the governance thing. So, Dalton, I want to bring this back up, the strike rule, the 3 strike rule. So it appears that one of the things reported, it was Jennifer Fryer of the AP reporting, that instead of the 3-strike rule, it will go to the 5-strike rule. Now, reminder, the only thing that was struck down, which NASCAR ironically overruled, was the roval. But for people who don't know exactly what that meant, what the kind of strike rule is, can you explain what it was from your time in the courtroom?
Yeah, so from my understanding, the way that I believe it was presented was that the 3-strike rule was a way for the teams to sort of keep NASCAR in check, that they could, if they all unilaterally disagreed on a certain decision that NASCAR was making, they could kind of push against NASCAR. And if NASCAR, if it happened 3 times, if they all agreed to, let's say, disagree on a decision by NASCAR, they would be able to break away. They would be able to break away and start their own series. Would be able to break away and start their own series without NASCAR having any kind of way to legally go against that. So I think now it's going to be five strikes instead of 3 strikes.
And again, it's probably not going to happen because the strike was used once,
mm-hmm.
and it was the
only
roval.
once, which is kind of strange that's the only
one. This
one.
also could incentivize them to do it more because they have 5 of them.
And you got to think too, like, because the roval got overruled, maybe they were like, oh, well, it doesn't even matter.
It doesn't even matter. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it has to matter in some way, because otherwise, why would you want to bring it back?
Yeah. Maybe they want it to matter. It matters more now, I guess.
It'll be interesting to see how it goes. For the other things are reported is about, and in the financial terms, the actual case will not be of the settlement in the case, like who's paying, like the lawyer fees, how much the teams are actually getting in revenue. Like basically, it might just be their made up revenue from this season. For example, like we are not going to know those things. That will be disclosed, but it is reported both by Jordan Bianchi and Jenna Fryer that they're going to get a third of revenue from IP, which is another one of those pillars, which was outside revenue streams. And they're also going to get a share of revenue from the international media rights deal, which is something they weren't getting coming in. It seems to me they're hitting on really all 4 pillars in a unique way where, we're going to get to a statement from Rick Hendrick. It feels like this is a big win, and you got to see everyone coming out of the courthouse. It definitely seemed to me that Jeffrey Kessler, Michael Jordan, Denny Hamlin, Bob Jenkins, I don't know if they acted like they won the case, but it feels like with this settlement, they felt like they won the case.
Well, it's like I was saying earlier, it feels like it's relief, because both sides knew what was at stake. That both sides knew that if this was going to go to the end, or if they couldn't find a settlement, it was going to be really ugly for one side and probably end up being ugly for the other at some point. So the damage from this lawsuit, they stopped it before it could get so much worse. And I feel like, because there is going to be some fallout from this, and I think we've already kind of seen a little bit of it in Richard Childress's response to some of the text messages he saw. Johnny Morris, which I saw a tweet earlier. It said it was like a quote tweet from the settlement announcement. Somebody wrote the Johnny Morris effect, which I thought was pretty funny. But either way, it's ending what could be so much worse. And I think that's what you saw outside of the courthouse was a lot of relief. Kessler and Buterman both, agreeing. And then Michael Jordan and Jim France, which I thought was really, really an interesting image of them shaking hands and joking around with each other after what was a kind of a brutal 8 days of just, evidence being piled upon one another. So it's interesting to me that they can kind of just shake hands and laugh it off like that. But at the end of the day, like, I think it is just because of that relief factor.
Yeah, Dalton, what song popped into my head so randomly as that I was seeing the images and videos and stuff of people outside the courthouse, like smiling and hanging out and stuff. It was the song at the end of Return of the Jedi where like the Ewoks are dancing and stuff. They'll do 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 do
Yeah, there were fireworks going off above Charlotte.
Because that's what it was. It was like they just stopped the Death Star from blowing them all to smithereens. That's essentially what happened by
There's a lot of
settling
people
here.
calling us nerds right now, Massey.
Probably,
Nerds.
but
Yeah.
No, I'm just
so it was cool to just see everybody. Credit to Brent Gamble for taking a picture of all you media folk out there who tirelessly worked at this case, these long hours. And you bring up the new revenue streams, the international and the IP. So that what that means though is that even if they didn't get a bigger slice of the media pie, they're getting more money. Like the teams are gonna be getting more money from this whole deal. And what I think that means is, more money to the teams means less rent-a-ride situations potentially. So
In other
we could
words,
see like a Corey Haim get an opportunity in Cup and things like that happen.
in other words, an improvement of race quality on the track, an improvement to the product,
which
ultimately that's the reward for fans.
yes, and we're gonna get to I want us to have a really good discussion about that. So let's save that. I want to get through a couple of these bullet points about this case. So Debbie asked, does 2311 get that third charter? Yes, they do. They get that third charter. So FRM has 3. So the 6 charters go back. So for anyone who was on NASCAR side thinking Dale Jr. is going to get a charter out of this, I'm sorry, that's not how he's getting one.
Hey, he's got to pay more money now.
Yeah, he might have to pay more money now, which, well, unless NASCAR wants to give out, was it 3? They can give up. It came out 3 charters, isn't it?
I think it's 3 with the introduction of a new OEM.
Yes, which there's one lurking, so who knows?
There is a possibility there, yeah.
So, and then another part of this, which is not shocking, it's kind of what the teams wanted initially. Charter revenue will periodically be negotiated amidst a new media rights deal. It's similar, like, honestly, it's like a mixture of taking like a franchise thing and a CBA, which is a collective bargaining agreement. And like collective bargaining agreements, you see the teams, like the owners and the teams always have to renegotiate that part. And that's kind of what that will be. It'll be like a collective bargaining agreement. But let's get into a unique dynamic. NASCAR and the future of the sport. And I Dalton, I know you were traveling last night, so you didn't hear kind of my rant on this. NASCAR, I feel like, is at its lowest point in terms of public perception with the fans. Coming from the way the season ended, the format changes, the way this case was handled, the way NASCAR came out looking, it does feel to me that fan perception and of the NASCAR sanctioning body is at an all-time low, and including the leadership structure. Where do you feel like the future of the NASCAR leadership is coming after this? Because there was a notable person there, and there was a notable person not there. You want to go into that?
Yeah, it's the fallout I was talking about earlier. There is going to be some fallout felt from this, and probably probably a little bit more on the NASCAR side. You see a comment right there. Somebody said, "Is Commissioner Steve keeping his job?" As noted, as we were kind of talking about, Steve O'Donnell was there, Scott Prime was there, of course, Jim France was there, but I don't believe I saw Steve Phelps there. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe some other reporter did see him or something. I personally did not see him there. That doesn't mean he wasn't there, but I digress. I mean, the point is that I do feel like if there's going to be some fallout from this, it'll probably be on the leadership side of things. That's because of what was given out, what was shown, the text messages that were displayed of the contempt they have not only for some of the actual race team owners, but even a little bit for each other. And Jim France said yesterday or I think it was yesterday, or 2 days ago, I can't remember, which was he believes that they have the best team. I think it was yesterday. They have the best team when it comes to in terms of leadership and in NASCAR, but the text messages, they don't look as good. Now, maybe the context is a little bit different. Maybe it really was the fact that they were just frustrated. Either Phelps was frustrated, Prime was frustrated, O'Donnell was frustrated, but it doesn't matter. That stuff that's gone to the public, and if you are Richard Childress, or if you were any other team owner in the garage, and you see Steve O'Donnell, you see Steve Phelps, you see those guys there, how do you face them? How do you work with them from now on? And I think that makes things a little bit more difficult.
And another part, you mentioned it, I think that I don't want to see the nail in the coffin, because, again, I hate speculating about people's jobs. But, like, when a major sponsor who not only sponsors Austin Dillon, but was the primary sponsor for the entire year of one of your championship 4 cars, and is one of the rare sponsors that, like, sponsors a car for a year, came out against the leadership structure, you follow the money. And like I said, I think there's a lot of good that Steve Phelps and Steve O'Donnell have done, but it does seem to me that there's kind of a natural, like, point of, like, leadership has to change. And sometimes you just need to change leadership and we see it in football, like with football coaches, like, to reinvigorize the fan base or re-energize the fan base. And it feels like this is what needs to be done with the sport. And if it's changing your commissioner, and the thing is, it can't be Ben Kennedy. And I think Ben Kennedy does a good job with scheduling, but it can't be a France either. So, like, it's going to be interesting what the next steps are in terms of, if, again, I hate speculating about someone's job, but it's fair to say you can see a Steve Phelps resignation coming, because I don't think he'll be outright fired. It'll be a resignation. And then how NASCAR handles those next steps is going to be very unique.
He should have took the PGA job when he had the chance, man.
He's punching air right now.
Yeah. Which he did confirm, like, earlier this week, that, like, when the PGA did approach him to try to get him. So I'm not making that up. But it is crazy that the narrative of Steve Phelps has changed so much in the last 5 years. When he came
5 years, I would say, like, last 4 months.
That too. But I just thought, like, when he came in, it was like this breath of fresh air.
He was the hope.
Yeah, he was hope.
He was a new hope, if you will.
Go back to
But the NASCAR empire struck back.
Again, I'm not here to get political, but go back to the Bubba Wallace situation, like COVID, like, go back to COVID.
Everything 2020.
Everything in 2020 was Steve Phelps. Like, his Q rating in NASCAR fans was like an all-time high.
Yeah. And then
to now.
I do think, like, Logano winning the title, he lost a little bit of that. And then
that's not his fault.
It's not, but the fans were starting to sour on the leadership with that. And just
according to reports, he might have not been happy Joe Logano won the title.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I do think that, like, Steve Phelps, I don't think he's like this evil man was like scheming behind closed doors and all that. I think he was trying to carry out his boss's wishes. And you need a fall guy. The fall guy is not going to be anybody with the last name France or Kennedy. And
one guy told that another owner needed to be flogged, and he was a stupid redneck.
Yeah.
Which, granted, like, I'm not here to say what Steve Phelps said was right, but it's not like he saying that being like, thinking Richard Childress would see it.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't, which sucks. But you know what? If there's any lesson for the last 2 days in the world of sports, things you do behind the scenes, if they come out public, will screw you. So be careful.
Like, I've said a lot of terrible things about Trey behind his back, but that doesn't mean that they
and in front of me. No, you.
No, I have to agree. Like, I mean, it does just feel like unfortunate circumstances. I mean, like, he'll land on his feet. He'll be okay. If he
He's a really good executive. Like, he's gonna get a job somewhere.
Like, when he made plenty of money. We learned this week he made plenty of money.
Yeah. Well, like,
Massey's probably give him his $2.5 million bonus and he'll resign.
Yeah. Well, like Massey pointed out, 2.5. like Massey pointed out, he started off like as a positive note. Like it did kind of seem like a breath of fresh air. It seemed like a good. He's going to do a great job. And to Trey what Trey said, I do feel like he has. But the fallout of this trial, something's got to give. And I feel like this is, if this does happen, if there is a resignation, I feel like that is potentially the best possible outcome, because it could be worse. It could have been everybody. It could have been a lot of people losing their jobs.
Let's keep looking forward. Do you have anything about the leadership changes?
No, I keep seeing comments about Junior getting into Cup. And let me tell you, the one major negative thing about this resolution, Junior Motorsports will never be in the Cup Series. Because the value is going to skyrocket.
That's what we were saying earlier.
Solo. I still think there's a way for him to be kind of get a Jeff
partner.
Like, yeah.
Could partner with
somebody.
Yeah.
But never just outright buy a charter.
Yeah. Unless
there's a lot of teams.
That's a different conversation for a different day. Let's stay focused.
Car teams that switched to Chevrolet this year.
Let's focus on the future. All right. So there's now two aspects of this that I really want to talk about, and I want to let brief. So if you've just now joining us, this is a special episode of Bringing the Heat. Dalton was in the courtroom today. We're talking about the settlement. We went kind of over the terms of the settlement. Do we expect leadership changes? So the first one is, ultimately, how is this better for the fans? A lot of people are asking that. I think we have some people in here in our section asking about, like, how is this better for the fans? I think got Jeff in here. I know he said something about it, but ultimately, like, how is this better for the fans going forward? Dalton, you can go first on this one. Like, why is this settlement so? Actually, before you start, I do want to read something, because he brings this up in his statement. Is Rick Hendrick? I think he's the first owner to
got away.
He's the first owner to
he and Penske both. Yeah. We almost had him.
To actually, which, by the way, Roger Penske announcing independent officiating in IndyCar today is going to just go under the radar. Anyways, and with someone who was kind of associated with this case, Ray Everham. So, anyways, the Rick Hendrick statement I do want to read for you guys, because it came out while we were recording. Millions of loyal NASCAR fans and thousands of hardworking people rely on our industry, and today's resolution allows us to focus on what truly matters, the future of our sport. For more than 40 years, NASCAR racing has been my passion. I believe deeply in what we can accomplish when we work together. This moment presents an important opportunity to strengthen our relationships and recommit ourselves to building a collaborative and prosperous future for all stakeholders. I am incredibly optimistic at what's ahead. When our industry is united, there's no limit to how far we can go or how much we can grow the sport we love. Now, the team, you had the kumbaya moment of the statement. Everyone was in the picture. These owners are now coming out saying, this is great. We're going to move forward. But ultimately, how are they going to move forward? How is this good for the fan base? Like, how is this settlement good for the fan base, other than we do not have to hear about it anymore?
Yeah, it's what we were saying earlier. And yeah, I'm sorry. I realized this was part of what you wanted to talk about. I mentioned it earlier, but I'll say it again. I mean, the overall track product, I feel like, is going to improve. I feel like that teams are going to get a little bit bigger piece of the pie. And from the permanent charter side of things, it's going to incentivize perhaps bigger sponsors, more sponsors coming in. It just makes them more valuable. It's not, we heard testimonies of people coming in and saying that they couldn't secure a charter because the charters weren't permanent. They only last about 7 years. So it's going to make things a little bit easier, I think, for them. And I feel like that is going to translate into what Massey was saying earlier, in that maybe we have less paid drivers and better drivers enter the sport, and we see teams become a little bit more competitive, and we see a bit more competitive racing product, even though it's very competitive right now. But we see an overall see an improvement on the on-track racing product, and really that's what we want. That's what we want the teams to be. You want the teams to be happy. You want the teams to be successful. You don't want a team to fold after winning a championship, like we saw with Furniture Row. You don't want to see a team lose $20 million after winning 2 championships, like in the span of 5 years, like we saw with Hendrick Motorsports. You don't want to see that. You want to see them become financially viable, and I feel like to become faster, to improve overall, to improve the racing product. And I feel like that is what is going to come out of this settlement. Hopefully, I don't know how much money they're going to get, so who knows? There's also potential that they could just outspend themselves.
Yeah, and then like we talked about earlier, less rental rides, and then I think the floor of the Cup teams raises, because now a Bob Jenkins, a Rick Ware, they're going to be able to spend more money on their team and maybe catch up to Gibbs, Penske, and Hendrick, who they were spending more than they're making. They were able to do that, whereas some of those other teams might have gone out of business if they were going by that model. So I think they'll catch up a little bit. You have a little bit more parity, which you do kind of need, because despite this car producing all kinds of parity, you've had the same teams win every championship since 2018. So there's that. And I'm trying to think of like something else. I don't know. A drawback that you see higher ticket prices to help pay the cost of the courts.
I was gonna say one thing I could see is how this would improve the lower series, is that these teams would be more like 2311 is sort of starting to build the model like where they have a pipeline.
Yeah.
And Hendrick is to some degree with Corey Day and Corey Heim. I wonder, by getting those by having the money to spend on a development, an actual developmental system, not the OEM spend the money on the developmental system where like Toyota does, but like an actual development, like it really turns the minor leagues. Back in the day when the big teams had the money, they would also race in the other series. Like RCR had, I know they have 2 teams now, but my point being, it could help that too. And getting the IP, like that's going to be getting extra revenue sources, but also they have a check on NASCAR again. Like not having a check on NASCAR is a big thing. And that is having some sort of governance is just a check on the sport itself is going to be a big thing. Plus, they are way more capable of getting outside investment now because it's permanent. Because you can go to a company and you want outside, not just sponsorship, just actual cash infusion, and say this will be a permanent thing. And then like that is one way this works, is that no investor was going to go to a team and be like, I'll invest your company, and then they lose their charter in 7 years. That's just not a good investment. Then they are out of their investment. They can get their investment back now, which infuses cash into this, where you can be more creative with sponsorship. You can be more creative with driver choice. You can be more creative this way and that way. So that is something to keep in mind.
I think you also want to factor, maybe there's a potential that we see, not just teams become more competitive, but maybe more teams just enter the sport as a whole. And obviously, with Cup teams, it's one of the side effects is that now we're not going to have more than 36 teams, or we're not going to go back to 43 cars every single weekend. But I do feel like that maybe we could see more investors come into the sport. Like we just talked about Dale Earnhardt Jr., who wants to start a JRM charter, and we said, oh well, he's definitely not going to get in the Cup Series now because it's how expensive the charters are going to be. Maybe it'll incentivize him to enter it more, because maybe he'll see that maybe they're going to make more money now. Like the idea that the teams, like owning a Cup Series team, is no longer a financial black hole. It's not financial suicide to enter the Cup Series anymore. Like you might actually make money now. So that's one of the bigger things that I feel like you have to consider is the fact, again, maybe not a startup team, but maybe you partner with a team like Shiak Motorsports or the Haas Factory team or Rick Ware. Those guys are now open to somebody coming in, an investor, a Michael Jordan, or say a Brad Keselowski or a Dale Earnhardt Jr. coming in and investing.
Tony Stewart was a year and a half away from making so much more money if he just held out a little longer.
I think he was done.
He was done, but
yeah,
if
there were other issues going on there.
If he could have just kept it going for a little longer. Another point I like to bring up is that after a whole 2 weeks of seeing all these messages about how these NASCAR executives handled SRX and handled locking up the tracks, I wonder if it causes them to rethink that strategy going forward, and they're not as, like attack dog whenever not even a rival competitor, like another series, tries to use one of their tracks. And I wonder if we do see like more racing series at some more tracks, because it makes them more profitable. And then there's nothing that's going to pop up that's going to be a true competitor to NASCAR, and I hope they realize that this week.
Looking at this, I think our final question here is ultimately, how does NASCAR go forward? And we mentioned the leadership structure. There's a lot of fan distrust in NASCAR, and they talked about in the statement they gave outside the courthouse that you got, Dalton, which you can check on our YouTube channel. Like, we want to focus on the racing now. We want to go racing. I always joked the new playoff format was going to be announced the first day of this trial. Turns out it wasn't. Maybe it's going to be announced the end of this trial tomorrow.
Green flag of the Daytona 500.
Anyways, outside of the leadership changes we talked about, how does NASCAR go forward now? Because there is a lot of fans that have gotten disenfranchised with NASCAR because, I wouldn't say because of what came out in this trial, and because of what has happened since this trial has began, and learning things about the France family and how much money the France family makes and everything to go along with it. How does NASCAR truly go forward in terms of, reestablishing that relationship with its fan base?
I think you look at the positives and you just you let the racing product play out, because you just said that we are going to have a new playoff product, or we're going to have a new playoff format in place in 2026. So that's a positive right there, because you already know that's what the fans want, and you let this play out. You settle with 2311. You settle with Michael Jordan. You come outside, you shake hands with Michael Jordan. You're all smiles, and you're off to a decent start. There's relief. It seems like there is a coexisting. These two entities can coexist now. Like, it feels like before it was like someone's got to go. Like, either NASCAR or 2311, someone's got to go. But now it feels like those teams are maybe not personally, but in front of cameras, they look like they're shaking hands and doing okay. So that's a good start. But then you enter this sport, and then you enter the season, which you go to Bowman Gray, fan favorite racetrack. That's gonna be great, no matter what kind of racing like we see. Like, it's gonna be a great event. Then you got the Daytona 500, the biggest race of the year, and you have a whole season planned out ahead of you, in which it's going to culminate to a playoff format that cannot possibly be worse than the one that we just had. So there's positives already going into this season. It's like Jim France said, we can focus on racing now. And I feel like that's what's going to matter. And of course, on top of all that, you're going to have happy teams racing in that sport along with it.
Full season. Let's bring on the full season. Let's announce it right now. That's their motto for this coming year is, what was it? It's like it's like going back to your roots or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, there you go. Back it up. And then there's things to get excited about for next year, like San Diego. That's something to get excited about. Return to Chicagoland. and then the typical races like the Daytona 500, Southern 500, and stuff like that, Bristol Night Race. People will get excited. Like, if there's one thing we've learned about NASCAR fans, is that they could take some abuse and they just come right back for more. So, like, I don't think that. I feel more optimism heading into this season than I did last season. Because last season you had the cloud of the trial, you had the same championship format that wasn't working, whereas now, like, it's all resolved. It feels like all the big problems are out of the way now, so now we can build it back up.
I'll tell you what, I felt a lot lower at the end of 2018 going into 2019 than I do right now. I never want to see a big three in NASCAR ever again.
Well, by the way, Dalton, the Stig is recommending the Cowfish restaurant. Just to put on that out here.
I will take any and all recommendations because my schedule is clear.
Dalton Hopkins will now
go to the Hall of Fame now.
Yeah, are they still even? Man, when did they close?
Is there still a Hall of Fame? No, I'm just kidding.
NASCAR had to sell it to Michael Jordan.
Part of the settlement, it turns into the 2311 FRM Hall of Fame. Anyways,
speaking of the Hall of Fame, I did want to say
time for that.
Yeah, I did want to say real quick that it's not going to happen right now, but I think like 30 years from now, when the Hall of Fame voters are like people that are racing now and stuff like that, people from this trial will be put up for like the Squire Hall Landmark Award.
Well, I was going to say
Kessler might be.
I was going to say I would bet the first person who is not in the Hall of Fame that was in this trial gets into the Hall of Fame is Denny Hamlin. But yeah, that
obviously
that's true.
But
Michael Jordan will be in the NASCAR Hall of Fame.
I could see with the impact Michael Jordan and Jeffrey Kessler have made on the teams, I could see like them putting them in for like those reasons.
It might be Michael Jordan, not Jeffrey Kessler, but I could see it. Anyways, you two were two people that were there at the trial. I will let y'all have the final word. Any final thoughts on your takeaways from this trial? How about this? How about instead of your takeaways from this trial, I keep mentioning the book, like the book of this trial that will come out. There's a lot of nuggets that are like they shared in this case that like we're like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know about that. That like will get overblown as time goes on. If you could name your favorite nugget that you learned from this case, like I think the cost to start up the car, like the salaries of the NASCAR employees. What was something from this case that surprised you or something you learned that maybe we will forget but will come back up in the book about this case or the documentary about this case that's like, oh, that was fast. I remember that. That was cool.
Matt, you want to go first?
It's tough.
You think it's something?
I mean, the thing that immediately comes to mind is the fact that one-time NASCAR Cup Series winner Bobby Hillin Jr. was looking to make a comeback and get into RCR, which is something we were not supposed to know about.
Which, by the way, there's still NASCAR court on next Thursday about the NDA. So, okay, so RCR being sold. Is that the biggest thing? I think it's the RCR that almost got sold.
That was a big deal. I also do want to bring up that Denny Hamlin almost did not re-sign with Joe Gibbs Racing as someone else approached Denny Hamlin with a contract at the end of in 2000 or for his 2025 contract extension. So we still don't know who that was, but apparently like somebody did approach Hamlin and Joe Gibbs had to increase the monetary offer.
And how Hamlin initially was going to buy into Richard Petty.
Oh yeah, that was a big one. Yeah.
Look, the biggest thing, it's not a nugget, but the biggest thing that came out of all this was the text messages. Like, as somebody who loves, who writes and loves, really good quotes to use for writing or headlines or what have you, those were like, whoa, like we made a whole podcast for them.
And you see how many of the moves NASCAR made in the coming years came from like SRX and stuff like that, like going back to North Wilkesboro and Bowman Gray. There's another one too that I don't know. There's a couple moves where they made them like solely more as like a reaction to we got to beat them there
Yeah.
than anything else.
Well, for M_Massey22, that's Michael Massey. For at Pitlane CPT, that's Dalton Hopkins. I'm at Trey Lyle VT. We'll be back tomorrow night for another one of these, recapping. I have another one of these.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you didn't know that?
You're
don't
gonna,
have to do
you're
it.
gonna recap.
Well, this is we're gonna recap the entire trial because we have a special guest.
Oh, that's right. Yes, of course. Yeah, stay tuned.
Though it's teased every day this week.
This person has been in law school and I forgot he had a Christmas party tonight.
The lawyers have it so tough, right?
So our in-house lawyer will be back tomorrow night.
Yeah, he's not our lawyer.
He's not our lawyer. He's just a NASCAR Truck Series driver. Okay, give me his last name again. I keep botching it. Malazzi. Okay, Stephen Malazzi will join us tomorrow. I'm guessing either Dalton or Massey will be with me. But for Michael Massey, for Dalton Hopkins, I'm Trey Lyle signing off. We're almost done with this episode of Bring the Heat. Bye, everybody.